Welcome, everybody, to that amazing introduction for an amazing teacher that we're going to be working with today. I'm Kelly Hilton, and I'm here with my buddy, Sarah Landis, and we are with Kevin Feramisco today. You want to say hello, Kevin?
Hello, everybody.
He is the teaching Jedi, and so we are so thrilled to have his expertise and have to talk to him today. Sarah and I are here to talk about HyperDocs and how teachers are using them in their classroom and tell their stories. And we met Kevin on Twitter. I think Twitter first, right? Before a conference. And then we got a face-to-face. And we have just really admired seeing what he has designed and shared with other people through social media. He's an 8th grade English language arts teacher, so any middle school teachers are definitely wanting to tune in. He has a ton of resources to share. We're mostly going to be highlighting his grammar HyperDoc and his outsiders HyperDoc, and then sharing all of them out, then really transforming classrooms. Plus, he has a really cool story to share with you about just his life and becoming a teacher. So thank you for being here, Kevin. We appreciate you taking your time.
Thanks for having me. I feel honored to get to do this with you guys.
Well, we feel honored that you took time out of your day. This is your lunch break, right? This is your lunch break chit chat today.
Yes, it is. Got a little bit of coverage in there for one of my classes, but we're all good.
That's so nice. So you're in your classroom, and we want to just start with, if you could tell us a little bit about yourself and your journey to becoming a teacher.
Sure. Yeah, so I came to teaching as kind of a second career for me, as it were. I was in retail. I started out wanting to do optometry. I thought I could be a good optometrist at some point in life. And so I went to school for that, had a biology major, that sort of thing, through Fresno State University. And I guess it could be a divine intervention, but I failed every single one of my chemistry classes and physics and all those other classes that you need for a biology major. So I ended up graduating and plugging everything into a BA, liberal arts degree, and took all my English classes the last year and a half that I could. And then it wasn't until about 10 years later that I went back to school in 2005 to get my credential. And I kind of fought my dad's been teaching for 38 years and retired teacher now. And I kind of fought the wanting to follow my parents' footsteps. I was a little rebel in that regard, if you will, and decided, it's in my blood. I went back to school, got my credential, and I was hired in 2007 for Golden Valley, where I currently still teach. So this has been my first gig as a teacher, and I wouldn't change a thing. I would not change a thing at all.
So you're at Ranchos Middle School, right?
Ranchos Middle School in Madera County, Golden Valley Unified School District, yeah.
Yeah, shout out to your school. They're lucky to have you. And I'm sure you have your people there that you get to collaborate with and share ideas with all the time.
Yeah, we have a great staff. It's a nice small school. There's my department, my English department I'm one of two. So I'm the only 8th grade English teacher, and we have one 7th grade English teacher. So our collaboration is easy. We share a common door between our two rooms, so it's easy to kind of talk back and forth about what we need to do. And we have a great staff. It's, we're all into Chromebooks, one-to-one Chromebooks, and it's just a fun place to be. It doesn't feel like going to work.
I'm sure you might have something to do with that.
Yes.
Yeah.
Sure.
So I'm just curious, on the first day of school, when students walk into your classroom, do they hear the Star Wars song, or do they know that you are the teaching Jedi?
They don't know the teaching Jedi part. I don't think they'd be as impressed with my Twitter handle as I seem to be impressed with it. But they do know Star Wars because, again, being the only 8th grade English teacher, all the 7th graders know me and see me around, and when they come in my room, they're impressed with all the Star Wars that's everywhere in my room, and all the little trinkets and gifts that I get from students every year. I just keep adding to my collection. So it's
really appropriate that you're an English teacher and that you love Star Wars, because it's one of the most epically written stories ever. And there's a lot of quotes that you could use when you're teaching your students that are memorable. And of course, there's the hero's journey story. We're just waiting for a Star Wars HyperDoc now. Maybe we'll have to design one of those where we could study the elements of a great epic story or something. I don't know. We'll let you be the expert on that.
Maybe something in the making for the summer, I think.
I think what I'm also thinking of too is, you know, Holly Clark taught Kelly and I once in one of our sessions, you know, make a name for yourself. And we want to kind of live that as educators and like really, you know, what do you stand for and what do you want to be known for? And I think you're really doing that, but also modeling that for your students. Like, who are you? Who are you and what do you want to be? And just kind of like solidifying that and living that process. I think that's pretty incredible.
Pretty awesome.
Thank you.
So, Kevin, you've shared a lot of HyperDocs with us. And before we dive into your Padlet of incredible resources, I want to ask you what's going really well for you in regards to creating and packaging your lessons using the HyperDoc concept.
That was a tough question for me when it was asked, because I seem to think everything's going well with our HyperDocs in class. What I am noticing though is that the engagement level has increased since we went one-to-one. The engagement with the students, the engagement with the collaboration going between the students, building in the choice that we really didn't have with paper prior to that. You know, there is collaboration that can be done on paper, but I think the creativity has spiked quite a bit from, this is only our second year going one-to-one. So last year there was a lot of trial and error, and it was awesome with Mr. Pieter, our principal, who kind of just unleashed us and let us do what we wanted to do and try to do, and allowed us to fail and learn from our failures. And so when we created a HyperDocs, some things worked, some things didn't, and you learn and you grow and you reflect and you just keep moving forward. So the things that have gone well for us is just, I don't know, it's just, I like the community in the classroom when there's a lot of talking going on. It's not silent. They're definitely not restricted in movement or where or who they can work with. It's a controlled chaos, and it's this kind of a thing where it's just a living classroom, and I love to see that in my students. I don't like forcing them to sit, and I don't like forcing them to listen. Don't sit, and they don't listen anyway, so let's get them up and kind of owning their own learning, if you will. So
that's great. And you kind of said it yourself that it's like it's a live classroom where there's people talking and moving around when you're delivering instruction in this way. And the ease of updating your lesson design right away within the doc can sometimes be helpful for that as well, especially when you have such elaborate designs that you've created. You must spend a long time thinking through an entire unit and packaging it. But I'm wondering about how often are you in the middle of teaching something and then having to think, okay, we got to rethink this and go in another direction?
All the time.
Yeah. Yeah.
The answer is all the time. But an example that I have this year is we went through not the Outsiders, the Giver HyperDoc in October. And last year it was all new, so the novelty was still kind of new, and the kids were buying into it a lot more last year. This year it seems to me, and I'm going to start updating that one, but it seemed a little bit repetitive going through the HyperDoc. So right in the middle of it, I just completely cut the whole thing out.
Yeah.
And we kind of rallied around a different activity to still bring in I wanted the critical thinking. I still wanted the creativity and the collaboration, but we moved it onto paper, and we moved it to a thing called the one-pager. They were given poster-sized paper, and some of the creations, and I tweeted it out back in October, but some of the creations were outstanding. And what I probably couldn't have done if we just kept repetitively going through, here's a chapter, here's vocabulary, here's let's talk about the character motivation and stuff. So we had to you know, I was bored, so I knew they were bored.
Right.
So
Right.
we had to change it up midstream. And I told them, I was honest with it. I said, I don't think this is working as well as I thought. We're going to scrap it and we're going to start something else. And I think they appreciate the honesty instead of trying to force a curriculum that it was obvious that it wasn't working. So that was the most recent one, you know, that I can think of this year's.
Well, thank you for sharing that, because I think authenticity with each other and with our students is like how we stay connected. And we always say you're being a designer instead of an assigner when you're creating HyperDocs. And so that's designing a learning experience, not just using technology because we have technology, but paying attention to the signs that are happening in our classrooms and our students and adjusting it as needed.
I think we talk a lot about designing and creating HyperDocs, but then there's that whole part of teaching with HyperDocs.
Right.
And just, you know, it's not one design or one size fits all. So I think every teacher has to, you know, be responsive to their students and switch things up for their own classroom. And like, yeah, you go into it with this one vision and left turn. And I think that's what teachers do all the time. And that's what we're really good at, is just kind of paying attention to how things are going, feeling the room and making changes accordingly. And that doesn't change when you're teaching with a HyperDoc. And so I just really appreciate that reflection, because I think other teachers who are new to getting started with HyperDocs, that's really important to hear that someone who's been doing it for a while is also still like, you know, willing to make those shifts.
Right.
So
yeah, with the HyperDocs, I mean, my HyperDocs, and I mentioned this earlier, is they tend to be very long and they're unit centered. I don't really do like a 1 day or a 1 week HyperDoc. So it's easy for me, since they're so long, to scrap what I need to scrap or add what I need to add. And still maintain the time frame, still maintain whatever pacing guides or whatever you want to call it. I don't, you know, but it allows some freedom. The length of mine allows some freedom. Yeah, they take forever to make, fine, but at the same time, I have a lot of freedom within it too. So
that's great. Kevin, you mentioned that you are 1-to-1 this year in your classroom, but last year, you said that you introduced the Getting to Know Google Apps for Education HyperDoc, where you designed a HyperDoc to just introduce your students to all the applications, docs, slides, drawings. How different was it last year versus this year with your students? How well are they able to navigate the Google Apps for Education in their second year?
Yeah, so last year being our first year going 1-to-1, prior to that, we had Chromebook labs. So we would have to schedule time into the Chromebook labs to use the Chromebook. And those were disastrous. The novelty was always there, so it was always a toy, not a tool. So once we went into 1-to-1 last year, and, you know, I had to build in some fun stuff, some low cognitive load, if you will, at the beginning, so they could learn the tools. So going through that Getting to Know GAF HyperDoc that I made was really just to get them touching and playing with all the different Google apps that they had access to. And that was outstanding to see. My very first HyperDoc in action. You know, you have all these, what looks good on paper doesn't always look good in practice. But to see that for the very first time and to see the kids take ownership in it. And one of the stories I told is we had a Sheets activity where they were creating a pixel art image. And so they were learning how to do the sheets and kind of learning pixel art. And I had one student who was he was a known computer geek anyways, started looking up YouTube videos about this thing called conditional formatting in Sheets. And so he YouTubed his own conditional formatting because he hated clicking on each individual box and then clicking the paint color and all this other stuff. So he figured out conditional formatting by himself. I had never heard of conditional formatting. This was how new I was to Sheets myself. Looked it up, taught himself how to do it, and then everyone was like freaking out that he was making these awesome pictures so quickly. And so he's all, let me show you. And he started literally going student by student, showing them how to do conditional formatting on their Chromebooks. And then by the end of the period and the very next day, we had these awesome pixel art images that they would not have done in, the 20 to 30 minutes time that we had. It was awesome. He took the learning all by himself and ran with it, and then everyone was like coming to him as the guru now.
Mm-hmm.
It was an awesome experience. Very first HyperDoc, and I couldn't have asked for a better experience.
That sounds awesome. Yeah, you touch on two things we talk about all the time when we're explaining HyperDocs to teachers, and that's starting with a low cognitive load, doing an assignment or a fun connection activity or learning Google Apps to learn the tools, and then moving into more deeper level content, and then allowing the students to become the experts in the room and highlighting that, because they can. And we don't need to know everything about every Google app in order to facilitate from it, because we'll be in this like parallel process with them.
Right. Very true. Very true. And that scares, I know in our district, there are some teachers who are a little skittish of technology because they want to know it backwards and forwards before they push it out to the kids. And we don't need that, because the kids are going to teach us things that we don't know. And I think that's important for them to own it. So I'm all for throwing it out there and see what happens. And if it doesn't work, then scrap it and we'll move on to another tool that we could, incorporate into the classroom. So
right, those teachable moments and letting things go the direction that they go naturally.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
So I am going to screen share your Padlet first of all, so that everyone can see all the HyperDocs that you have packaged and shared on this Padlet. It's amazing to see. And you'll see some that have been revised and remixed, which is perfect, like the 6-word memoir and manifesto HyperDocs, because that's one of the things is once you see something that you like, you should make a copy of it and make it fit for you in your teaching classroom.
Yep.
And then the originals here. So I'm going to take us to the Outsiders first.
Okay.
And ask you to just kind of talk to us about this creative process and teaching and design and delivery of this HyperDoc.
Yeah. So the Outsiders was kind of my, what do you call it? I don't know. Just I've loved teaching the Outsiders. I've taught it every year since I was hired. So this is my 12th year teaching this novel. So it was kind of a labor of love, if you will. The design of it, this was of the HyperDocs I've made so far, the bigger ones. This is the last of the ones that I've made, or kind of the end. So I realized that I like a cleaner look to my HyperDocs. I don't like to cram a lot of information on my slides per se. So I link out to a lot of the activities that they do. So I like the cleaner look. I wanted to, obviously the Outsiders, dealing with the 1960s and kind of gangs and troubled home lives and troubled friend life and that sort of thing. I want it to be a little bit more gritty in look. So unsplash.com, I got to give props to that website. All of my background photos come from Unsplash. Finding a lot of really old kind of gritty looking images to go along with the theme. That I thought was very prevalent in the Outsiders itself to kind of give it that look. And then I just go through a couple chapters at a time, and we link out to different activities, something having to do with the right there on slide 9, the gang, and so getting to know Johnny and Ponyboy and Dally and all the characters in there. And so because chapter 1 in the Outsiders pretty much does an outstanding job of telling us everything we need to know about each of these characters. And then the rest of the novel just kind of builds upon that. So we get to know them pretty quick. And so I want my kids to kind of dive into those characters right away, right at the outset. And then we just kind of go through and do different activities. I want them, like the slide you're on now, or sorry, yeah, that one talking about my generation, learning who their generation is, learning the qualities of what their generation is known for. I think that's important. I think with social media today, with so much going on, they hear a lot about millennials. I think we all hear a lot about millennials, but they don't really know what Generation Z is, which they are, and kind of getting to know their own generation, and then kind of thinking through, do they fit the stereotype that, you know, society is kind of putting on them, and give them the opportunity to kind of create their own soundtrack. You know, what would your generation soundtrack be, based on what you feel your generation is, and based on what society feels. And you know, a lot of the outsiders we look at the greasers and we think, oh, they're horrible because the way they look or the way they dress, and the socias, obviously they're a lot more clean cut. So again, we play with a lot of identity in this outsiders as well. So just trying to play off of the themes that we see in the novel as well.
What a fun activity. I have not had the privilege of teaching the outsiders. I would love to teach it. I could see, like, this is such obviously a labor of love, because highlighting one of the themes of generations, and giving students a platform to think of their own generation and their own identity, and through music and lyrics. I think that's such a fun activity. I'd love to see what they come up with through that, because they could really take ownership and connect with that.
Yeah. It allows them to, again, be creative, and yet kind of connect themselves into the bigger world around them.
I love it. And you mentioned Unsplash. I think that's one of the first things that really drew me to your HyperDoc too, because of the gritty photo imagery. But I'm looking at the 11 care of the design of each activity. I mean, once you've gotten to chapter 4, they've already had a chance to have an overview of all the characters through that other linked slide deck, and they've done some generation building, like who they are, and then they're moving into teen violence in America and all of these resources. And here's like the then and now. The themes in this book are still very real. It looks like that's what you were trying to accomplish.
Yeah, very, very relevant still today, regardless that the novel was written, you know, 50 some odd years ago. Extremely relevant in these kids' lives. And I just want to make sure that we understand that violence doesn't have to be the end, you know, that doesn't have to be the decision. And I try, as much as I'm supposed to teach content and standards, I try and also give some good life lessons in there as well. And I think The Outsiders does a really good job of showing, okay, yeah, these kids are back in the 60s, but they are no different than you and me. The only really difference is their dress and their appearance. So
this is really cool too. You have them do a hero's like tribute speech.
Yep.
A hero in their life.
Yep. They need to think through who in their life has been there for them through thick and thin. Who in their life do they have to run to go to in the time of trouble or in the time of need? And I make them do a real person, not a fictional character, because I think it's important to, again, we need to be weighted in reality, and for them to have those mentors and those people in their lives to speak into their lives. So,
wow! And then you do a eulogy project as well.
We do. The eulogy project gets can get a little morbid, or seems morbid at first. I have them write a eulogy for one of the 2 characters that pass in the novel, but then I also ask them to write one for themselves, and to kind of force them into not looking morbidly at their death, but looking at how well did you live, and what is it that they want to be remembered for? What is it that they did well in life that left something behind? We kind of do something similar in our Anne Frank HyperDoc when they do the Legacy project, but this one kind of tags along with that, as far as we want to live every moment that we have. We don't know when the end is, and yet what do we want to be remembered for when we do leave? And I think it's a good introspective work that they do when they get into that project.
Wow, Kevin, it's a really beautiful lesson. Lots of love and care that you put in here, leading up to some final projects as well.
Yes.
Do you want to talk to us about the final project, or do you want me to screen share some of your students' final projects?
Yeah, let's talk about the final projects. The choice board. I love choice boards, and I think choice boards are important important to have in the HyperDocs as far as creativity and collaboration, and definitely the student choice with the projects that they want to create. So that choice board is loaded with about 10 or so different projects that they can do related to the Outsiders. Some are technology driven, some are pencil and paper. We have a lot of great artists, and I don't want to discount the artists in our student population either. So while I don't use a lot of paper in the classroom, paper is always an option for students when they want to create things. So there's some really good different activities for them to kind of show what they know, show their learning, bring it into just bring it into every day. And then there's some just for fun. There's the rap battle, the epic rap battle that they have between a Soch and a Greaser, and just some fun stuff too that they can create and kind of show their understanding of the different characters.
So fun. There's a ton of good ideas on this choice board. So this is at the end, but one of the last slides of his HyperDoc.
Yeah.
Before Kevin has credit, he's given credit for photos and other, and for who designed the lesson. So from this choice board, you had shared a student's work, the Outsiders photo scavenger hunt.
Yeah.
And so this was one of the choices, right?
Yeah.
Very cool.
So they researched different ideas from the 1960s, and so they were focused on S.E. Hinton and the author, and kind of pop culture during the 60s, and the war during that time, presidents during that time, bands and cars, and everything that kind of popped up and played a role in the novel itself. They could do their own kind of research and see what the 60s looked like back then. Again, they're far removed, obviously, from that decade, and I thought it was important, or at least to give them the opportunity to do a little research based on that.
I think too, Kevin, what's funny is you're talking about giving choice to your students, but as a teacher who's listening in right now and checking out all these incredible options, I feel like a teacher that has choice, and I might pull one part of your HyperDoc to teach with. So when I see you've got this photo scavenger hunt, and I'm thinking about making a historical time period come alive, like what a great, sidebar. If I'm not teaching the Outsiders, I might choose to use one of your choice options as a teacher in something else that I'm teaching. So it's kind of neat. You're talking about providing choice for kids, but I'm thinking, oh, as a teacher, I'm going to choose that and put that into a unit I'm working on, or a text, or a concept that I'm teaching.
That's what's wonderful with the HyperDoc community and the people that I've connected with is it doesn't matter the content. Everything is remixable to their own content. I've stolen, quote unquote, from so many different HyperDockers out there, and just kind of remixed it and turned it into what I needed or what I thought my students might need. But yet, the choice is still there, and the heart behind the lesson is still there. It just, the content changes. So
I love that.
So great. I think that you totally get it. That's what we're trying to help people see. Like, I get so many ideas just from studying other people's HyperDocs and then applying it to what I'm trying to teach. Basically.
Okay, so should we give our confession? Kelly and I were talking about this a while ago.
I didn't know we were going to be confessing. What am I about to say?
We shared with each other recently that we get nervous now to create HyperDocs because there's so many good ones out there.
What she's talking about.
There's just so much good stuff, and we continue to draw inspiration from teachers like you and so many other people out there, and just beg, borrow, and steal all those great ideas and remix. And like you said, it's not about the content; it's just thinking about new ways to deliver instruction in our classrooms. New ways to think about how the tech can enhance what we're already doing. But it was cute because not that long ago, I was like, there's some really good stuff out there.
Yeah, you guys inspired quite a few teachers out there to create some really awesome things. And it's fun seeing all the different iterations that keep coming out, and the different, you know, the was it the wild robot that was put together, Heather Marshall and team put that one together on the Google Sites, which was pretty awesome to kind of use a Google site as a hub for the HyperDoc. And what Nadine Gilkison is putting together, I mean, that's obviously more for elementary school, but oh my gosh, they're outstanding. And the design that she puts into it is crazy. And I always look, I don't care that a teacher is kindergarten or second grade, there's something that's usable for a middle school and a high school. And it's you got to be open to it. So
someone recently asked me, like, how long does it take you to make these things? And I was reflecting on that question and realizing, you know, at first it feels very overwhelming when you're learning all of the tools.
Yeah.
But once you start creating in this way, there's this like inner creativity that comes out of yourself, and you get excited to create, like what we ask our students to do, and you get ideas from other people. And before we were sharing lessons in this way, teachers are sitting in staff rooms talking about these awesome things that they've just done. And this is what teachers do. We get excited about designing really cool learning experiences. And it's just like so easy now to go beyond the four walls of our classroom, beyond the teachers and staff within our school, and go into all these other neighborhoods across the country and find other people who are excited about lesson design as well. So it's very exciting.
Yeah, it's fun. The design is fun. The time it takes, obviously, when you're designing your own curriculum, if you will, and you know, there's some effort that goes into it, and but I think in the long run, it's worthwhile. We're definitely not. We aren't textbook centered at our site, which is awesome. We don't even check out textbooks to our students anymore. So we're pretty much use all online open resources, the OERs, the open educational resources, and our principal encourages that. He basically would rather spend money elsewhere than on a new adoption. And so it's fun getting the opportunity to build what we can build, and knowing that we can change it every year if we want to with new updated information, and we're not stuck to something that's been published, and as soon as it's published, it's out of date. So now what? And we're not stuck to that. So
Kevin, I'm glad that you're sharing that, because I think it's really scary for a lot of people, for teachers, administrators, you know, stakeholders making those decisions about how to spend money. And it is scary, but you're kind of saying, like, we've done it, we're doing it, and it's okay. And we're even having a little fun along the way. Because I think, you know, ripping that, you know, traditional Band-Aid off is a big deal. And so thank you for sharing that. And props to your admin for being willing to be kind of one of the first to do that. Hopefully that's a little inspiration for other people, you know?
Absolutely.
And it's not like good teaching isn't happening without that textbook in the kids' hands.
Very, yeah.
Right. I love that.
Well, before we wrap it up, Kevin, I wonder if you could just do like a 2 or 3 minute overview of your grammar HyperDoc as well, and how people can navigate that, because I know that that's pinned on your Twitter page. And I think that this is a question people ask all the time. How can we take this content and kind of make it engaging? Can you do that for us?
Yeah. So I've hated teaching grammar since I started teaching. I love grammar and I love writing, and it is important, an integral part of everything that we need to do as far as writing and being able to write well. Yet a grammar workbook and grammar in the textbooks, and there's so many different kind of camps out there, like how to teach grammar and where grammar should be taught. Is it in context, not in context, that sort of thing. So I kind of took it upon myself over this past summer to try and make it a little bit more engaging and make it a little bit more fun. throwing in a bunch of grammar fail pictures that are just out there all over the place, and Twitter and different things that we've seen, and package it into a year-long HyperDoc. So this isn't something that we go through like one lesson a week or anything like that. I do about one lesson every 2 to 3 weeks. Right now, I'm currently on right around lesson 8. Hoping to be done by our SBAC testing window, but package it in a way that these were my 10 based on the students that I have, my 10 that I felt 10 lessons that were the most pressing for my students in the writing that I saw. But yet it's very, very modular, so that it could be used in elementary school, depending on the standards that are being taught there. It could be updated for high school. You could add, you definitely don't have to stick to 10, that's for sure, and kind of add different things to it. I also see something like this, and I was thinking about this earlier, using something like this for literary terms, different as far as content, and using it in different content for terminology, say in science or math or whatever it might be, in kind of a fun way. We need them to know certain terminology. They need to know certain vocabulary, but opening up a dictionary, looking up a word, writing a definition, kind of boring, and they're just sitting there. They're not really learning it. They're just kind of copying information. And I think I tried, to make something a little bit more engaging, a little bit more fun, and something that's just not grammar time, and everyone's like, ugh, and they just want to stab themselves with a pencil, and just kind of whatever. That's just something a little bit more fun. Now, that's not to say every one of my students are thoroughly thrilled with HyperDoc, but it's definitely a lot better than a workbook page or a copy that they're just kind of filling in the blanks and that sort of thing. So there definitely is a lot more engagement there. And it's built-in collaboration because they're all working together at tables and kind of helping.
I always say it's like our trick as teachers is to turn our have-tos into want-tos.
Right.
I have to teach this, but how can I make it a little bit more of something that I want to teach and the kids want to learn?
Yeah, agreed. So I'm hoping it works out. This is, like I said, this is the first year, so it might look a little different next year, depending on what I reflect on and what worked and what didn't work. But it seems to be going okay so far. So
great.
We'll see.
Foundation to start with. It'll be easy to just remix your own HyperDoc.
Exactly.
Well, Kevin, thank you so much for sharing everything with us. I know that our viewers will really enjoy having these resources. We're going to post this video and the links to your resources on our HyperDocs On Air website, and we'll tweet that out and share that with people, and you can share that as well. Just for fun, I wanted to try something with you. I saw this the other day on an interview, and it's called This or That.
Okay.
So I'm going to ask you 3 questions, and you just respond as quickly as you can for this or that, okay?
I'm ready.
The first one is football or basketball?
Football.
Okay. USC or Stanford?
Stanford.
Okay. Luke Skywalker or Han Solo?
Han Solo. Luke Skywalker. Luke is a little whiny for me.
Those are all the right answers. No.
All right, I want one more because we got to talk about the bad guys. Darth Vader or Darth Sidious?
Darth Vader for sure.
Very cool. Well, we love that you are the teaching Jedi, and we appreciate you for sharing your special forces with us and teaching us along the way. Anyone who wants to learn more about Kevin and his resources can check out his website. If you want to learn more about how to create HyperDocs, we have the HyperDoc Handbook that is on sale at Amazon, or there's a lot of resources on hyperdocs.co. I'm Kelly Hilton. This is Sarah Landis. We want to thank you, Kevin, so much for going live with us today, and we'll see you out there online.
All right. Thank you.
Take care.